Okay, I'm just going to set up, and then I will do a countdown, and then you know that I'm going to start from there, so you can cut all this out. Okay, can't see it for looking. There it is. Okay. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Hi, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk with you today. My topic is digital transformation in mining. Why does it matter? What is the current state? And what does the future look like? So firstly, why does it matter? So you and I know, and because we experience it in our roles every day, that we were living in a time of ever-accelerating change, where technology is influencing the way we think, the way we interact, the way we absorb information, we collect data, and those changes are then informing technology. And this cycle is disrupting the way that we think about the world and how we are able to solve problems. And this disruption is fundamentally important to us then rethinking how we go about, especially some of our more traditional industries, mining being one of them, because it's allowing us to fundamentally rethink them. So our role as leaders is to prepare not only ourselves, but also our teams for this change. And that can be quite harrowing because, we often as humans want to keep things the same. We want to raise reasons why things won't be successful. And it's our job as leaders to encourage people to make some of these changes, think about things differently, look at different technologies and look at the problems that we can solve and how some of these technologies can drive solutions to those problems. There are broadly 5 system-level innovations that we need to solve in mining. And then this is also why we have to go through a digital transformation, because these problems are unsolvable without fundamentally using different technologies, different ways of thinking to solve them. And those 5 problems are global ore body intelligence. So what if we were able to understand our ore bodies down to the last gram, down to the last metre? So exactly where all of the mineralogy, all of the metal or material that we're interested in is. What if we could do that significantly faster, cheaper, and more completely than we can do now? So what if we could find ore bodies 10 times faster at half the cost and know exactly where everything is? How would that change, radically change, the way we go about our industry? Autonomous and electric mining. Again, how do we redesign our traditional extraction methodologies so that we don't have people in those processes at the coalface? They may still be driving autonomous equipment, they may still be monitoring equipment, they may still be training, etc. And what if we could electrify that completely? So we went completely green as an industry. Again, how would that radically change what our industry looks like? Now that we no longer have people on, at the coalface, how does that change fundamentally our mine designs? And then precision extraction. What if we can rethink the way we actually extract metal so that we reduce the amount of waste that we move? So rather than moving 10 tonnes of waste for every 5 grams of gold, or about 9 tonnes of waste for every, I think it's around about 100 kilos of copper, what if we could extract just the metal, or at least just the mineral? How would that again radically change the sustainability of our industry? What about symbiotic development? What if we could redefine the way that we add value to our communities, to governments, so that it was sustainable, that we were business partners with shared prosperity? And again, how do we then rethink some of the business models? And can we create disruptive business models that use some of these technologies to their full advantage? So one of the significant drivers in the adoption of technology in mining should ultimately be to ensure that we can attract highly talented people. And we all know that this is a challenge for us in mining, because sometimes we're seen as an archaic industry. In some cases, people might think we've solved all the problems. It's not an interesting industry. In some cases, they see us as unsustainable. So what if we could attract these highly talented people to help us solve what is some of the greatest challenges in the world? And one of the reasons why I love working in the mining industry is because it touches everybody every day. So the greatest challenge we have in the mining industry is to radically change our sustainability, radically change our cost structure, radically change the impact that we have on the world and the environment, radically change the value that we create for shareholders, for governments, for communities, for our people. And if we could encourage people to help us solve those problems, we would attract the most highly talented people. But again, it is through technology that we will solve these problems. It's through technology that we will attract some of this fantastic talent. And it's through technology that we will protect the planet and still continue to give its inhabitants ever-increasing quality of life, which is, what I'm proud the mining industry has done over many decades, if not centuries. So the mining industry has adopted technology. Certainly since I started in the 90s, I've seen PCs come in as a standard thing. Believe it or not, there were not PCs in mining when I first started. I think, in fact, I had one of the first ones at quite a large mining company that I worked with at the time. We've used CAD and other computerized sort of systems to take away our need to do hand-drawn plans, hand-drawn designs, hand-drawn geological models or resource models. We've started then seeing the proliferation of IoT devices and other digital workflow tools, especially ERP systems, moving into then maintenance systems, etc. And then, in the last sort of 5 years, we've seen an explosion with automated equipment, very large data sets for geology as we include more and more digitized information into geology. We've seen AI and other processes, augmented processes, so we've started to see an uptick. But I think the challenge for us in mining is, do we keep what looks to be a relatively linear adoption profile, or do we start to create one that is much more inflected? So what does it look like today? So information is getting faster and cheaper. The ability for us to understand, what our people are doing, what they're experiencing during those activities, where our equipment is, the health of our equipment. As I said, geochem, using core samples, looking at different geological information, rapidly integrating that into our plans. All of these techniques, AI, computer vision, becoming significantly cheaper and faster. IoT devices, going from hundreds of dollars to hundreds of cents. Even LiDARs, being $150,000 only about 5 years ago, now sitting around about $20,000 to $10,000. So the price is coming down significantly, which means that we can get more information. We can get it faster at very limited costs. Material moving is looking very, very different. So again, with the use of technologies, we can use more robotics. We can take people out of the coalface with automated trucking systems, automated conveyance systems. We've even started to see robots come into warehousing. We can do fundamentally different things such as 3D printing. So no longer do we have to move things around the world. We can print in situ at least some of our needs. Still a lot of work to go on there. We've started exploring things such as in situ leaching and whether we can use better data, better understanding to perfect some of those techniques. So there is a number of things that have changed radically in terms of the way we go about doing things. And certainly during COVID, location no longer matters. So we can collaborate through virtual reality. We can collaborate where we're, hundreds, if not thousands of kilometres apart. We can get information from drones and other devices rather than having to be in situ. We can certainly do a lot of analytics, and we can have remote operating centres that allow us to coordinate in a more collective and collaborative way. And then we can even use robotics so that we don't have to, again, put people into the coalface. Instead, can have them working more remotely, doing more analytics, creative work. And of course, the way we think about energy is fundamentally changing from a carbon base through to a more renewable base. And we're seeing a lot of mining companies not only enter into these themselves, setting up solar systems, setting up wind systems, looking at things even like small nuclear reactors, looking at wave technology, green hydrogen, etc. But we're also seeing them, of course, fuel this technology drive by supplying the minerals and materials that are needed: lithium, nickel, cobalt, copper, of course. And then we're seeing, a number of consortiums. This one happens to be in Australia, but there are others that are looking to try to understand collectively what are the impacts on their mining operations, on their mine plans, on their equipment of some of these changes in technology. And this is being made possible by the ability to create virtual twins. And for me, this is the future for digital in mining, which will drive significantly faster change. So what I may mean by that, so we can now do simulations. We can create in the virtual world simulations of what we want to try to do in the real world. We can iterate them rapidly. We can try different innovations. We can work collaboratively. We can nuance things, taking the risk down and, of course, building up our ability to get those innovations right and to do that rapidly. So here we see a simulation of an underground facility, really looking at what would be the change that battery electric vehicles would create to both the mine design, to the resource, to the block models, to the way we fuel and network those systems. So the more that we can model, the more that we can design and simulate the real world in the virtual world, enable people to experience those outcomes. So, what I like about creating not just virtual twins where you see numbers and graphs, but virtual twin experiences where you can see videos, as I've shown, is that you can then explain this to, and people can experience and understand that are not necessarily technical experts. And in mining, we are often trying to explain highly technical things to people that aren't experts in those technologies. So whether that be to government officials, to our communities, in some cases even our board members, and in some cases even just others that are part of the mining industry, part of our management teams, our executive teams, who may not have that particular technical specialty. And the wonderful thing about virtual twin experiences is not only is we can replicate from science-based principles what happens in the real world, in the virtual world, but we can create this wonderful experience where people can understand exactly what's going to happen. So the next step, the future of some of these virtual mine experiences, is obviously building them across functionality, and then not only connecting the simulations and what we do in the virtual world to predict what's going to happen in the real world and create plans and reduce risk and allow us to innovate faster. But then if we can connect that to the real world so that as we gain more information, we gain more insights, we can then go back and improve our simulations, improve our ability to predict. And there becomes this sort of virtuous cycle. And that allows us then to, I think, very, very rapidly innovate, change, and think differently about our industry. So here's an example of where we've connected a simulation to a real life actuals. So this is a simulation. And now we transition into the actuals. So as you see, we can overlay the simulation with the actuals and then change the simulation if needed. So for me, this is the future of mining. And, you know, what is interesting, because I know often people talk to me and they say, well, aren't we dehumanizing? Aren't we taking people out of the equation? For me, we're actually augmenting people. Yes, we might be removing them from the coalface. Yes, we might be putting them in more office environments, in more collaborative environments where they can work together, work with the machinery, work with what's happening. But the more that we adopt and we enable transformation through technology, I think the reality is that the more people are important, because those people that we have in our industry, then working as a team, working collaboratively, active listening, you know, problem solving together, all of those skill sets actually become far more important. And the ability to augment human endeavour by giving them more data, by giving them more analysis of that data, by making suggestions about how we could improve, allows them to then be creative and use their thinking more laterally to make those improvements and to optimise. So disruption is here. The technology is here. And for me, speed matters. So our ability to identify the problems we want to solve, to find the technologies that are going to solve those problems, to implement them into the industry and then scale them. So not just implement them at one small part of one of our sites, but actually have that across all of our operations to scale some of these solutions as an industry. That is what's going to transform our industry. And that's what I'm looking forward to. So thank you very much. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. There's both my email as well as my LinkedIn address. And I look forward to sharing more thoughts with you around what's going to be happening in the industry over the next few years. Thank you.